So as we all know at this point, we are pretty much in the spookiest week of the spookiest month, which means that today's the day we talk about spooky Skylanders to match with the season, and I don't think you guys know how long I have waited for something like this. This is one of those rare times where I can just look at a single element and just pick whoever I want to be in a video, but then a problem arises. I have to pick who is going to be part of this video, and surprisingly, it was very difficult. Thanks to me constantly making videos about Skylanders, there's about 7 Skylanders left if we do not include the minis, which is crazy once you consider the fact that I talked about all of the Undead Superchargers, SWAT Force members, most of the cores, a third of the Senseis, and half of the Trap Masters. Not to mention the other Skylanders that would fit in a Halloween video that aren't part of the Undead element that I just don't know about. And after a bit of pondering, I would get an idea. Now, a buddy of mine has wanted me to cover a certain Skylander for a long while now, and because of that, and the character's relation to the Undead element, I decided that I would do something special. I would pick out one Skylander, use my friends for the other, and then get a third one from you guys. And since the community post is pretty much wrapped up at this point, the Skylander who won the vote will be at the end of the video. So grab some popcorn, dear viewers, as we go over the Skylanders who made the cut for our Halloween video, which also marks the 100th Skylander if I'm correct. I'm pretty sure Dark Matter will say something in the comments, and if you're watching right now, let us know. But with all of that said and done, let's get started.
I've got my eye on you.
Now, out of all the Skylanders that I have talked about on the channel's history, Eye-Brawl is probably the Skylander, or Skylanders, that I've kept in my back pocket for the longest of times, and that's just because of how much stuff is going on with him. Not only does he have a sibling, has multiple different appearances in a multitude of comics, but he also has to be one of the most interesting and popular giants next to T-Rex, and he also has a Halloween variant. But with all of that said and done, let's take a look at his backstory and see what we can exactly learn. Interestingly enough, Eye-Brawl isn't just one person. In actuality, they are two. The Headless Giant and the infamous Flying Eyeball. Two entities who hold the title of starting one of the most bizarre wars in Skylands history. And it all started with a staring contest. Now, I don't exactly know how this happened, but the two would eventually and somehow get into a staring contest with each other. But there would be a couple of problems though. The first one being the fact that one of the contestants didn't have eyes, and the second being that the other physically could not blink at all. This would all quickly escalate into an all-out war between the two, as they couldn't agree on who won and who lost, the two battling each other throughout the land of the undead for more than 100 years before they would eventually get tired of fighting each other and just call it a draw. After the two stopped thinking about beating each other to death for 5 minutes, they would come to a realization. The two of them would be far stronger together than apart. So the Eyeball would pop himself into the spot where the giant's head should have been, and in that moment, Eye-Brawl was born. And as a result of combining their abilities, they would become one of the most powerful pair of Skylanders to ever exist. And after they, along with the other giants, defeated the Archean Empire and were sent to Earth, the entire team would return home in Skylanders Giants. After this, he would make an appearance in 3 stories: Return of the Dragon King, Dive Dive Dive, and Ripped into Overdrive. And since I promised to do this, let's talk about Dive Dive Dive. And since I can't find where the hell this damn book is, I'm going to be piecing it together through the characters involved. I know it sucks, but I'm off break and stuff is fast approaching, so I need to get this done as quickly as possible. When water levels mysteriously began to rise all across Skylands, Diveclops would be sent to investigate what exactly was going on, and he would discover an underwater factory producing way too much water. But before he could investigate what was happening, he was intercepted by a submarine and overpowered by its crew, which consisted of Brawl and Chain, Brawlrus, and the leader of the whole operation, Captain Blubberbeard. Blubberbeard's plan was to flood the entirety of Skylands with the factory so he can rule over it, and when Eye-Brawl came to rescue his brother, the submarine that he was using would be destroyed by Blubberbeard's, and thinking that the giant was dead, he would send Diveclops to the brig of the ship where he would be imprisoned. There was one problem with this plan, however. Both the Headless Giant and the Flying Eyeball didn't need air to survive. At least that's the case for the eye demonstrated by his brother, and the two would survive and reunite with Diveclops, where they would hatch a plan that required the two to switch bodies. Eye-Brawl's eye would take Diveclops' suit to cause a distraction, while Diveclops went with the Headless Giant to the bridge of the ship, where the two would divert the sub's course and crash it into the factory, destroying it and causing the vehicle to sink. Blubberbeard would want to get revenge, but he decided to save the lives of his crew, and all parties would escape the vehicle relatively unharmed, but the 3 walruses would manage to escape Eye-Brawl and Diveclops. But just before they were able to fully escape, Spyro would arrive with the other airborne Skylanders and eventually capture them. And this is pretty much where the stories end. Now, when it comes to Eye-Brawl, I think the biggest question I have about him is more or less a question about the eyes themselves, and that's how do they even work? I mean, there are so many different types of eye creatures in Skylands, and that makes me question how they're all connected. What separates the eyes that come from an ice cream from the flying eyeballs? And about that, what is up with the weird eye creature from Trap Team? I mean, I don't think there's any images out there, and I probably won't be able to show one, but it's this weird eye creature with dragon wings, and it just looks really weird. And speaking of which, he and Diveclop swapping bodies must show how much trust the Eye and the Giant have with each other. But with all of that said and done, I think it's about time that we jump into the next Skylander of today.
Cut to the chase!
Now, out of every Skylander discussed in this video, Shortcut is probably the best Skylander when it comes to making a Halloween video, and is probably the best Trap Team member when it comes to designs. He just looks amazing, and you can argue that he's either a scarecrow or a roughly stitched doll using different fabrics. And what's crazy is that it works extremely well, even with the Traptanium weapon. But with that out the way, let's take a quick look at his backstory and see what we can learn about him. Before Shortcut was a Skylander, he used to be renowned for making the best clothing in all of Skylands, and before he had his Traptanium weapon, he had magical shears that he could use to make clothing, and he was pretty much able to work with any material. No matter how bunchy, thick, or even difficult the pattern was on the fabric, he was able to use it to make whatever piece of clothing he needed. But one day, a fleet of ships led by skeleton pirates would appear above. Before this, the pirates had plundered a large amount of golden yarn from a group of fortune-telling soothsayers, and the leader of the pirates would demand that Shortcut make a wizard hat out of the yarn that could tell the future of everyone in Skylands, and told him that if he refused, he would suffer whatever consequences he had in store for him. Shortcut did not want to see his work used for evil or sinister purposes. So that night, Shortcut would manage to sneak onto the pirate ship and sew all of their clothing together so they couldn't fight. And you think this approach was beyond cartoonish, then you haven't seen anything yet. Shortcut would then use his magical shears to cut down the sails of the ship and wrap them around the entire vessel, effectively trapping all the pirates inside, and all of this heroic tomfoolery would catch the attention of Eon, because how the hell would it not? And he would eventually become a member of the Trap Team, where he would go on to swap out his magical shears with the Traptanium one. Now, before we go on to all the stuff that I want to talk about, let's talk about this Looney Tunes insanity before we go on. Now, if I'm interpreting this stuff correctly, which I think I am, Shortcut not only snuck onto a pirate ship, but he also managed to sew all of their clothing together without waking any of them up, which is a feat in and of itself, but also managed to cut the freaking sails of the ship off and sewed it together around the ship. That alone is a feat and a half that I don't think anybody has rightfully given him credit for besides Eon, and what's crazy is that we don't even know what kind of skeletons he was dealing with. This could be anything from Cyclopses to trolls to the basic skeletons we see in fiction and so on, but if there's anything about this backstory I would like to ask is why does the whole Trap Team use Traptanium weapons when many of its members have far better weapons? Like Shortcut. I mean, this question probably sounds nonsensical at first since according to the wiki, it's meant to weaken villains, but the more you think about it, the more my question kinda starts to make sense. I mean, if they use the weapons to trap villains, there would be a point to them, but I don't think we've seen them used like that at all. They just have it on them. And the villains can be weakened without them shown by other Skylanders in-game and in the universe. I'm not trying to say that all the Traptanium weapons are useless since they're the only thing that can break Traptanium, like those random crystals, but still, why not have your own weapons you're more familiar with, or have enchanted properties on hand as well? Kinda like a backup. Actually, now that I think about it, that would only just weigh them down, so yeah, never mind. Wait a goddamn second, now that I think about it, if those things were already in the game, what's the point of adding the Traptanium gates? There's already a reason to go out and buy a Trapmaster, so why not leave the gates alone, or hell, just make the Trapmasters directly tied to the gimmick? Guess it's just Activision getting greedy again. But before I get worked up about the Traptanium gates again, I think we should get going to the last Skylander of today, because I swear, if I stay here any longer, the video is going to be 5 extra minutes long, and I do not have time for that.
Your time is up.
Now, when it comes to community posts assigning Grim Creeper's inclusion, it was actually surprisingly close, and it was kind of because I couldn't really tell who won the competition. Now, what I want to happen was you guys leave a single Skylander that you want to see in this video, and the one with the most likes of their name would be part of it. There would just be one problem. Damn near all the comments suggested 2 or more Skylanders, so I had to guess the numbers a little bit. But after doing a little bit of math, I was able to figure out that our boy Grim Creeper won the competition. His normal design is great, but goddamn, not mentioning his concept art would be a disservice of the highest magnitude, because that version was way tighter than the one we got, not to mention how trippy the figure looks. But that aside, let's hop straight into his backstory and see what we can learn. Before he was a Skylander, a younger Grim Creeper would visit the prestigious Grim Acre School for ghost wrangling in hopes of attending as a student, but due to the fact that Grim Creeper didn't have any of the training that the other students had, he was turned away by the school scaremaster. Just as he was making his way off the premises, a herd of rampaging ghosts would flood through the school and drag the faculty away with them, leaving the students to fend for themselves. Grim Creeper wouldn't flee, however, and instead, he would use his skills to not only hold his ground and contain them using his talents in reaping, but he would also do this while defending the students until help arrived. After this event, he would become a Skylander, along with being considered one of the best reapers to swing a scythe, proving that studies alone are no substitute for bravery, passion, and a true heroic spirit. Now, out of everything in this story, the biggest question that I really have is, how the hell does something like that happen? And what I mean is that the ghost specifically kidnapped the faculty only. Think about it, a school's faculty consists of teachers, professors, coaches, and administration, and all of them were snatched while the rest of the student body in Grim Creeper were completely fine. How could the ghosts have possibly known the difference, and why would they need to know the difference in the first place? Were they all former ghosts used by the teachers in presentations and they wanted revenge? I mean, that's the only thing I could really think of, but with that out the way, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and happy Halloween! Like always, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy content like this, share this around so I can grow as a channel, leave some comments down below to make the algorithm happy, and I will see you all in the next one.